Here is a question that has started more arguments in barbershops, church parking lots, and family WhatsApp groups than almost any other business question in America. Laundromat or trucking? And here is the problem with every answer you have ever heard to that question. Most people answering it have never actually run either business. They are giving you opinions dressed up as facts. Cousin Marcus says trucking because he knows a guy who makes good money. Your barber says laundromat because he heard it is passive income. YouTube gurus say both because they are selling a course on each. Today nobody is selling you anything. Today we are going to sit down with the actual numbers from 2026, lay them side by side, and let the math tell you the truth that most people are too lazy to calculate. But before we get into it, I need you to do something. Think about which one you believe is better before this video ends. Because I promise you by the time we get to the verdict, at least one thing you currently believe about these two businesses is going to be wrong. Drop a comment right now. Before you hear a single number, which one do you think wins? Laundromat or trucking? Drop it below. I check every comment on this channel and I want to know what you think before the math gets involved. Welcome back to Rich Habits. Subscribe if you are new here. And if you think this is going to be another surface level YouTube comparison where someone shows you two businesses and refuses to give you a real answer, go scroll TikTok. But if you want the actual numbers, the actual failure rates, the actual timeline to $1 million, and an honest verdict you can act on, stay right here. Because the numbers are not what most people expect. Let us start with the laundromat. And I want you to pay attention to a specific number before we talk about anything else, because this number is the single most important fact about this industry that most people in this debate completely ignore. 95%. That is the 5-year success rate of laundromats in America. Not the failure rate. The success rate. 95 out of every 100 laundromats that open are still operating 5 years later. To put that in perspective, the restaurant industry has a 60% failure rate in the first year alone. Technology startups fail 80 to 90% of the time. The average small business in America has a 50% failure rate in 5 years. Laundromats fail 5% of the time over 5 years. That number alone tells you something profound about the nature of this business. It tells you that once you are in, you are almost certainly going to stay in. Because the demand for clean clothes does not disappear during a recession. It does not slow down in winter. It does not depend on a trend, an algorithm, or a consumer preference that could shift next year. People have always needed clean clothes. They always will. Now let us talk about what it actually costs to get into this industry. Because this is where the conversation usually falls apart. People hear laundromat and they think you need $500,000 before you can even open the doors. That is not accurate. There are 3 entry points depending on your capital. The first is what industry insiders call a zombiemat. This is a poorly maintained, underperforming laundromat that a tired owner is selling at a discount. The machines are there. The plumbing is done. The electrical is in. The space is leased. It just needs someone with energy and a plan to bring it back to life. A zombiemat can be acquired for anywhere between $35,000 and $200,000. Add $50,000 to $100,000 for equipment upgrades, a fresh interior, and marketing, and you are fully operational for under $300,000 with an existing customer base and none of the build-out headaches. The second entry point is buying an already performing laundromat from an owner who wants to exit. This costs between $100,000 and $300,000 depending on the location, the equipment condition, and the monthly revenue it is already generating. You pay more, but you are buying a proven cash-flowing business, not a blank canvas. The third entry point is building from scratch. This is the most expensive path, ranging from $200,000 to $500,000 for a mid-size location with commercial-grade machines. Here is exactly where that money goes. Your lease deposit and first few months of rent will cost between $4,000 and $20,000. Monthly rent ongoing runs between $2,000 and $10,000 depending on the city and the neighborhood. The build-out, meaning plumbing, electrical, and flooring, runs between $50,000 and $150,000 and is the single most variable cost in the entire project. Your equipment, including commercial front-load washers at $3,000 to $10,000 each and commercial stacked dryers at around $6,000 per unit, will run between $100,000 and $200,000 for a fully equipped store. Factor in signage, change machines, a card payment system, security cameras, Wi-Fi, licensing and permits, marketing for your opening, and a 3-month working capital reserve, and your all-in cost lands somewhere between $200,000 and $500,000. Now here is where most people stop the analysis. They look at those numbers and they say that is a lot of money for a laundromat. And yes, it is. But what they fail to do is calculate what that money generates in return. A mid-size laundromat in a good location generates between $15,000 and $30,000 per month in gross revenue. After monthly operating costs of $7,000 to $25,000, the net profit lands between $3,750 and $9,000 per month, or $45,000 to $108,000 per year. The average net profit across the industry is $5,000 to $7,000 per month. Now here is the analytical insight that changes everything about this business model. That profit arrives whether you are there or not. A laundromat is fundamentally a vending machine at scale. Customers come in, they load the machine, they pay the machine, and they leave. You are not trading your time for that income. You are building a system that generates revenue around the clock while you are doing something else. That is the definition of passive income. And it is available from month 1 of operation. The break-even on a properly managed laundromat is 4 to 12 months. Full capital payback on the initial investment takes approximately 4 to 5 years. And owners who reinvest that early cash flow into a second location, then a third, build the kind of multi-location portfolio that generates $1 million in combined net worth in 7 to 12 years. This is not theory. Dave Menz, known as the Laundromat Millionaire, built a chain of laundromats in Cincinnati, Ohio using exactly this reinvestment strategy. Cash flow from location 1 funded location 2. Cash flow from locations 1 and 2 funded location 3. The math compounds the same way a stock portfolio compounds, except you own a physical asset that generates cash regardless of what the stock market is doing. Now let us talk about trucking. And I want to give this industry the honest analysis it deserves, because there are people who have built genuine wealth in trucking. But I also need to tell you something about this industry that the trucking influencer community works very hard to avoid saying clearly. The startup failure rate for new trucking companies is between 85 and 95%. Read that again. Between 85 and 95% of new trucking startups fail. That is the inverse of the laundromat. While laundromats succeed 95% of the time, trucking startups fail 85 to 95% of the time. These two numbers alone tell you more about the relative risk of these two businesses than anything else I could say. But let us understand why. Because the why is important. It is not because trucking is unprofitable in theory. It is because trucking is mercilessly unforgiving in practice, especially for undercapitalized first-time owners. Here is the cost breakdown for a single owner-operator starting in 2026. Your truck is your biggest single expense. A used Class 8 semi-truck from the 2017 to 2021 vintage with 400,000 to 700,000 miles costs between $45,000 and $80,000. A down payment of 10 to 20% means $9,000 to $16,000 out of pocket before you have hauled a single load. A new truck costs between $130,000 and $190,000, which most first-time operators have no business buying. Your trailer adds another layer. A used dry van trailer costs between $10,000 and $20,000. A refrigerated trailer for reefer hauling runs $25,000 to $45,000. If you run power-only loads using shipper-provided trailers, you eliminate this cost but limit your flexibility. Here is the number that kills more new trucking businesses than any other single expense. Insurance. A new trucking authority pays the highest insurance rates in the industry. Annual premiums for a single truck run between $12,000 and $26,000 per year. That is $1,000 to $2,167 per month before the truck moves an inch. Many new operators budget $5,000 for insurance based on what someone quoted them informally, then discover the real number at binding and immediately face a cash crisis. Your federal operating authority, your DOT number, BOC 3 filing, IRP plates, IFTA decal, an electronic logging device together add another $2,000 to $5,000 in startup compliance costs. Add your CDL medical physical, drug testing program, business formation, and a 3-month cash reserve of $24,000 to $42,000, and your total startup cost for one truck lands between $50,000 and $120,000. Now here is where the trucking analysis gets analytically interesting. Because the gross revenue numbers look genuinely compelling on paper. A truck running 10,000 miles per month at the current dry van spot rate of $1.80 to $2.40 per mile generates between $18,000 and $24,000 in gross monthly revenue. Contract rates through direct shipper relationships run higher at $2.20 to $3.20 per mile. But gross revenue is not net income. And this is where most trucking business projections fall apart. After fuel, which consumes between 30 and 40% of gross revenue at roughly $6,000 per month for a truck running 10,000 miles, your insurance prorated monthly at $1,500 to $2,100, your truck loan payment of approximately $1,146, your trailer payment of $650, maintenance reserves of $500 to $2,000, Eldon software at $75, permits and tolls at $200 to $600, and self-employment tax set aside at 15.3%, the typical single truck owner-operator nets between $50,000 and $90,000 per year. And here is the critical distinction that the Laundromat analysis reveals by contrast. Every dollar of that trucking income requires you to physically be behind the wheel or actively managing a driver. The income is not passive. It is not compounding without your involvement. The moment the truck stops, the revenue stops. If you get sick, if you break down, if freight rates drop for a month, your income compresses immediately. The industry profit margin for trucking carriers sits at 6 to 8% of gross revenue. The Laundromat margin sits at 20 to 35%. That gap is not a minor difference. It is a fundamental structural difference in how these two businesses generate and retain money. Now let us put the two businesses in direct comparison, because the numbers side by side are more revealing than either analysis alone. The Laundromat has a 20 to 35% profit margin. Trucking has 6 to 8%. The Laundromat has a 5% 5-year failure rate. Trucking has an 85 to 95% startup failure rate. The Laundromat generates income whether you are present or not. Trucking requires active operation by you or a driver you pay. The Laundromat break-even is 4 to 12 months. Trucking break-even is 6 to 12 months, but the risk of catastrophic failure during that window is exponentially higher. The path to $1 million in net worth through Laundromats takes 7 to 12 years through multi-location scaling. The path through trucking takes 10 to 20 years through fleet scaling to approximately 100 trucks, according to industry veterans. On startup capital, trucking has the lower barrier at $50,000 to $120,000 versus $200,000 to $500,000 for a mid-size Laundromat build. This is the one genuine advantage trucking holds for someone starting with limited capital. A motivated person with $50,000 and a CDL can be generating revenue in 60 to 90 days. That same $50,000 is not enough to open a laundromat, though it might get you into a zombiemat with heavy negotiation. So here is the honest verdict that the numbers demand. If your goal is to build passive income that compounds into millionaire-level wealth with the lowest risk of catastrophic loss, the laundromat is not just better. It is dramatically, measurably, and statistically superior. If your goal is to start generating income immediately with the lowest possible capital, you have trucking experience, and you are prepared to actively work the business while managing every expense with ruthless discipline, trucking gives you the faster initial cash flow. But you are entering a business where 9 out of 10 people who start where you are starting will not still be operating in 5 years. Here is what the laundromat ultimately offers that trucking cannot. It offers you a system. A machine that generates revenue around the clock, that serves a need that never disappears, in an industry that has one of the lowest failure rates of any small business in America. Every dollar of profit it produces is a dollar you can deploy toward another location, another investment, another income stream. The path to $1 million is always built on the same foundation. Consistent cash flow, reinvested systematically, over time. The laundromat does that automatically. The trucking business requires you to earn that cash flow actively every single day, in a vehicle that depreciates, in an industry that can compress your margins overnight when freight rates drop. The math does not lie. But only you can decide which truth you are willing to live with. Now I want the comment section to tell me something specific. You have seen the numbers. You have seen the failure rates. You have seen the margins and the timelines. Has your answer changed from what you typed at the beginning of this video? Go back and check your first comment. Does the math agree with your gut? I check every comment on this channel. Drop your updated answer below. If this video gave you a clearer financial picture than anything you have heard on this topic before, give it a thumbs up and share it with one person who is genuinely debating this decision right now. Subscribe to Rich Habits so you never miss a video like this one. I will see you in the next one.